Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Tuesday afternoon, possibly even Wednesday morning for some of you. If you are tuning in live here on Behance today, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. I want to say a big hello to Richard and Golden Rose, and Rebecca's in the house. Great to see you, Rebecca. Sotiris, if I mispronounced your name, I apologize. We've got Pedro and Abir and Dorina, Bernadette, who's been waiting all day for this. I've been waiting all day for this too. Ruth and Sam and Robert, great to see all of you. I hope you're all excited about the latest round of XD Daily Creative Challenges. And if you missed yesterday's welcome stream, let me give you a very quick rundown of how this all works. We're running from today, where the first challenge drops, until next Friday. So you've got 9 challenges in total. Let me hop over to my screen, and if you go to behance.net/challenge/XD, you can get all the information about these challenges. At the top, it does say February 1st to the 26th. I believe it's actually the February 1st to the 12th. So ignore that part. Press the big blue button at the bottom, or right at the top, I should say, if you want to be notified when new challenges are released. And like I mentioned, every day you're going to receive a challenge, Monday to Friday. You can join us in our community chat over on Discord. We've got over 55,000, possibly even over 60,000 designers in Discord, which is incredible. You can get all the information about the daily challenges. You can share tips and tricks, ask questions. More importantly, you can hop into the Creative Challenge channel. I nailed it today. It's always a mouthful. And you can share your work, you can give feedback, get feedback, and just build up your skills. It's a wonderful community, so definitely hop into Discord and have a good time. You can also watch me live here, 2 o'clock Pacific time, Monday to Friday, and then you can share your work, like I mentioned, either on Discord or on Behance. Now, the challenges, every single day, around 8 o'clock in the morning, they do unlock and they will appear right down here at the bottom. And as you can see here, today we are going to be tackling the profile screen for this social media based application. And as I mentioned yesterday, these challenges this time around, they're sort of progressive, but they're not really progressive. You won't necessarily have to complete every single challenge in order to do the next one. So if you missed 1 or 2 days, completely fine. All right, let's take a look at the chat. We've got Laura and Kelly and Henry and Umacorn and Joss, great to see you. Seth and Katie. Portland in the house. Los Angeles, California. New York. San Antonio. Just people from all over the place. And I know we have a lot of viewers right now from India, and it's like 3:30 in the morning in India. So thank you so much for tuning in so late or early, whatever it is. I don't know if you've gone to sleep yet or you're just waking up. But thank you. So go ahead and hit the get started button so you can download the template. And one thing I want to mention, let me actually hop over to XD for a second. Here's the template here. And if we zoom on in, we've got our challenge prompt, but we also have something a little bit new this time around. I've spent a little bit of extra time over the last week or so recording more polished, streamlined versions of the content you're about to see in this live stream, and it's available on YouTube. So every single day, you'll not only be able to watch this live stream, but if you want a more condensed version of this content, you can go to this link right here, or you can go to youtube.com/Howard Pinsky. Here's the video right here. It's 13 minutes long compared to this 25-minute long live stream, and it doesn't include all the chatter and blah, 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 right? Tasmania, ooh, that's fun. Louisiana, New York, sweet, great to see all of you. All right, so let's hop over back to Adobe XD. We've got some inspiration down here on this profile, but let's go ahead and we are going to dive straight into this. And if you watched yesterday's welcome stream, I gave you a few hints on what we're going to be designing today. So some of it might look familiar, but some of it will also be brand new. So we've got our artboard right here looking nice and fresh. And the first thing I want to do is really set the stage for this particular design. So I'm going to select the entire artboard, and then over within the properties inspector, I might want to just drop the color to a nice dark. Now you can go pure black, you can go a little bit above, completely up to you. One thing to keep in mind is that if you're designing for OLED displays, using a pure black, even though typically as designers we don't go down that far, it helps with battery life. So keep that in the back of your mind. But I'm gonna go a little bit up, somewhere right about here. And what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be adding a little bit of a header image. We did this yesterday, so you might be familiar. I'm gonna grab the good old rectangle tool, shortcut key R. You can also access your tools from the left-hand side in the tools bar, and I'm gonna drag out a header just like that. Beautiful, right? I think it looks good. All right, now yesterday we went ahead and rounded out the corners of this header. We're not gonna do that because we're gonna kind of twist it up a little bit. So I'm gonna hop over to Finder or Explorer on Windows, and I am going to hop into this folder right here. Got some great looking neon shots, including this one from Adobe stock. This is just colorful, it's bright, looks wonderful, right? Pop it over here and boop, there we go. Let'sXD.com. Thank you, Sam, for posting that. If you are new to XD and you wanna learn about new features or just start from the beginning, Let'sXD.com is a great resource. So we've got our header image looking pretty good. Now on top of this, we want a container that's gonna house a lot of the content we're gonna put in this profile. So once again, with the good old rectangle tool, I'm gonna draw one out. Now I'm gonna leave a little bit of room in this area here. And I'm gonna explain why I'm doing that in a moment. But I'm gonna drag it from right about here and all the way down to the bottom. I'm gonna leave the border on. Oh, no boop button, hold on. Boop, haha, there we go. All right, so we've got our new rectangle. Now, because we're going for a darker feel and we love the colors in this particular image at the top, we might wanna bring some of that back in. And you saw a little bit of this yesterday. So in the Properties Inspector, right down at the bottom, I'm gonna turn on the background blur. And it looks okay, not too bad, but I wanna tweak the settings a little bit. I'm gonna crank up the amount of blur that we're using, just like that, to 50. That way, if we have content on top of this, it won't be too bad to see, right? The next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna drop the brightness down to about 0, like that. And that looks pretty good, right? Now, of course, if you do wanna bring some of the color back of that rectangle, what you can do, you can hop in here, change this to your color of choice. Now you're noticing nothing's really happening right now, and that's because the effect opacity down at the bottom is set to 0. So if I were to start increasing this, it brings back some of that color. And if I go all the way to 100%, it basically gets rid of the blur. So let me go back down to 0, increase it just a little bit so we have a little bit of gray in there. And you can also, if you want to get a little bit fancy, is maybe we'll add in a touch of blue. Just a touch. It's really hard to see, but there's a little bit of blue in there. I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but there we go, right? All right, so we've got our shape looking pretty good. Now we do have a border, right? Let me zoom in here. The border looks okay, right? I'm gonna put it on the outside of this shape. But what I'd like to do when I'm working with these dark shapes is set the border color to a pure white, and then to bring down the opacity. Just like that. Maybe increase the size. This way, if you're putting it on the outside or the inside of the shape, it brings in some of that color from the shapes behind it, which is really nice, right? So that looks pretty good. Let's play around with that a little bit. I want to keep it nice and subtle. Now, the next thing I'm going for is I want the shape to look a little bit more fluid. So what I want to do now is I want to round out the corners. However, I don't necessarily want rounded corners like this. It looks okay, but I want more of a curve at the top. So in this case, with this rectangle selected, I'm going to double click on it to access the path. And I want to add a point in the middle. Now, if you want to be very specific, you can hop over to the left-hand side of your artboard and drag out a guide until it snaps into place, right about there. So now if you go ahead and add a point, you know exactly where to put it. Now, if I were to grab this point, let me hide my guides, Command and Control, semicolon, I believe it is. If I were to drag my point, right, it's a very harsh line. We definitely don't want that in this situation. So I'm going to double click on this point to convert it into a curve. And now I can move either this point up, or I can go ahead and grab the point on the left and the right and move these down. Completely up to you. Both will accomplish more or less the same thing. Then you can go ahead and click and just curve it just like that if you want to, right? So we have this nice curve at the top of our application. And if I do go ahead and launch the preview at the top, looks like I might have a preview launch somewhere. I can't launch it. There we go. We have this nice area right out the top. Okay, so now the next thing we want is the avatar of this particular user. So with my ellipse tool this time, we're driving away from that rectangle. I'm gonna hold down my shift key, drag it out to constrain it to a perfect circle, and pop it right into place, right about there. Maybe I'll leave a little bit of room at the bottom, just like that. And for this particular avatar, we want a few separate shapes. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in an image. So I'm gonna hop back over to Finder, and I've got these great looking shots from Toy Faces, including the one of me, which is, look, it's me. I should have worn the red shirt today, but it's me. It's wonderful. So I'm gonna drag this directly into XD. And around this, I want a black or dark border. So I'm gonna set the border to black, increase the size. I can put it on the inside or the outside, completely up to you. And this will just allow us to separate this avatar from the background, and also the additional shape that we're about to add. So I have this here, and I want to duplicate this. Command and Control D to duplicate. And we're gonna be using this. I'm gonna call this gradient. We're going to be using this shape to add a gradient behind our avatar. And this will indicate whether or not this user possibly has a story, right? We all love stories. Every application these days has a story feature. So I'm going to turn off the fill in this case, the border. And instead of a solid fill, I'm going to go for a linear gradient. And we'll go for, let's say, a nice red at the top, and maybe we'll transition to more of a purple. And I'm gonna pop it behind the shape and just whoop, make it larger. And I should probably note that I use the Command key plus the left square bracket key to move that gradient shape behind the avatar. All right, that looks pretty fancy. And if you want to, you can always grab this shape and add a bit of a shadow as well. Maybe I'll increase it down here at the bottom on this Y value, increase the blur so it's nice and subtle, and then play around with the opacity as well. All right, looking pretty good. Now, down below the avatar, we may want the user's name. So with the text tool, shortcut key T, you can also grab it within the tools bar to the left. I'm gonna click and type out my name, Howard Pinsky. Now, in terms of the styling, this is way too big. And if I take a look at it, taking up too much room. So I can go ahead and grab this handle right at the bottom of a text layer and drag it on in. Let's try 18 pixels. Let's actually go for Sophia Pro. It's a nice typeface, and we'll go maybe semi-bold so it's not too in our faces. I think that could potentially work. I might actually bump it up just a little bit more. And then right down below that, we can duplicate this text layer, Command and Control. You can either Command and Control D to duplicate, or you can hold down Alt or Option and also drag down. And this might be secondary information. So might be, let's say, where this person is from. So I'm gonna type out Toronto, Ontario. And because it's secondary information, I want to not only drop it in size, but also drop it in weight a little bit. So right now we're at semi-bold. We can try regular. It doesn't look too bad. And then I might want to bring down the opacity as well. Let's try 60%. And if I take a look, it's not bad. I'm going to bump it up just a little bit more, just so it's not too small. All right, I'm digging that. Perfect. Now, as I'm going through this process, as I'm creating colors and as I'm defining character styles, I definitely want to make sure I'm saving these in my libraries and my assets so that I can very easily update them and use them in the future. So right at the bottom of your tools bar to the left-hand side, we've got our libraries. And when you hop in there, it's going to take us to our document assets. And we've already added some colors right over here for you. And what you're able to do is with a color, with a shape, or a text layer selected, you can go ahead and press the plus button over to the right, and it's going to add that directly in there. You can do the exact same thing with character styles. You can select multiple layers as well, and just add them directly in there, right? And what you can do also is double click, and let's say this is name, right? And this will be secondary. Of course, you can use things like H1 tags, H2, and that sort of thing. We're gonna run with this. All right, so right down below this information, we may want one more text layer that is more of a description about this user. So with the text tool one more time, shortcut key T, instead of simply clicking for point text, I'm going to drag out a text box, just like this. And it's going to define it as an auto height text box. And you're going to see why that's so important in a moment. So let's go ahead and type out my bio. Designer by day, Comic Sans user by night. Don't at me, right? And you're noticing as I got to the end of that auto height text box, it automatically resized and it went down to the second line, which is exactly what we want. And I can move this in if I want to. And there we go. We've got our lovely bio. And don't comment on my Comic Sans usage. All right, so right below our bio, we may want to display some of the users that either I'm following or that are following me. And this is where those toy faces are really going to come into play. Here's what we're going to do. We are going to grab the ellipse tool one more time, shortcut key E. And if you want to, by the way, if you want to make sure that everything's lining up really nicely, I would recommend dragging out some additional guides. Let's go for 32 pixels on the left and 32 pixels on the right as well, just like that. So ellipse tool, shortcut key E. I'm going to hold down my shift key and drag out an ellipse somewhere right about here, just like that. And I'm going to add a little bit of a border. I'm actually going to sample one of these colors here, and you'll see why this border is going to be added in just a moment. So I've got one ellipse, and of course I can go ahead and hop over to Finder, drag one image in, and then manually duplicate, and then drag another image in, duplicate. Nobody's about that life, right? So let's go back. This is one of my favorite features of Adobe XD, one of the earliest features of Adobe XD. Bernadette's asking, how do you get toy faces? And then Sam just posted the link. Everyone's just on point today. So one of my favorite features of XD, repeat grid. So I've got this one object selected. Right at the top right-hand corner of the interface, we've got repeat grid. Just like this. Someone's asking, how do you change the color of guides? You can't at the moment, but that would be a great feature request. AdobeXD.uservoice.com, head over there, definitely upvote that. So we've created a repeat grid, and now we can drag out additional circles going across. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, possibly. So we've got 7, right? And now I can hop back over to toy faces. Let's start grabbing some images. So maybe this one here and this one. And we've got 2, 3, let's see what else, 4, there's so many options, 5, 6, and 7. And all we have to do is drag all of them directly into any of these ellipses, boop, there we go. And what's really nice is you can also adjust the spacing. So hovering in between any of them, I can adjust the spacing like this, or I can also bring it back like that. Right? Which is wonderful. And it also keeps your cells up to date. So if I want to make these larger, for example, I can dive in here, make these a little bit bigger. Now, because I have a repeat grid, the bounds set up already, all I have to do now is just make this a little bit larger. And there we go. We can overlap them like that. And that's why I added this border a few moments ago, is so that there's a little bit of separation between all these toy faces. I'm going to go ahead and just bring this out just a little bit. Now I want to make sure that we're not overlapping there. There we go. That looks great. Now over to the right of this grid of users, I may want a very quick number on how many people are following me. So I'm going to grab my text tool one more time. Let's go for 25 point, let's say 2K, and then followers. Just like that. Now there's a few stylistic changes we might want to make to this. One, I might want to left align it. I can do that directly in the Properties Inspector. And then two, I might want to put a little bit more focus on the 25.2K number. So I'm going to just double click and select just that bit of text, and then I can bump this up to maybe bold. I can make this a little bit larger if I want to, adjust the line height. There's a lot of different things you can do to your text layers. There we go. Maybe I'll grab both of these and center them a little bit more. All right, there we go. Beautiful. All right, now down below this particular area, I may want 1 or 2 buttons so that a user can follow or send a message. And we're going to be getting a little bit into components possibly, but we're going to dive more into those a little bit later on in the challenge. So with my rectangle tool one more time, we're going to drag one out. Let me show my guide so I can make sure everything snaps really nicely. I'm going to leave a little bit of room on that right-hand side so that I can add another button. So I'm going to pop this right about here. And I want to round out the corners completely for this button. So there's these handles on the inside of these shapes, and I'm going to drag that in. Now, for things like follow buttons or call to actions, you want a nice actionable color that's typically not red. That's more alarming, right? So I'm going to use a nice blue actionable color, somewhere right about there. And I just defined a new color. So in my assets, I'm going to boop, press the plus button to define it. All right, so we've got that looking pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my text tool, again, shortcut key T, and let's go ahead and type out follow. Now, because this is the main call to action on this screen, we want to make a few changes. One, I'm going to make this a little bit larger. Let's try 18. And then I'm going to really bump up that weight to about bold and make sure this is centered. Now, if you really want to make sure something is centered in the middle of a layer, if you select this text layer here and also this background container by holding down your shift key and clicking, right at the top here, you've got your alignment and distribution options. You can press align that way and to the center. And now you have a nice centered button. If I take a look, it's looking pretty good. I might want to bump this down just a touch because text layers sometimes have a little bit of padding at the bottom. All right, I'm also going to make sure before we wrap things up to group some of these elements. Command and Control G, type follow, and we've got our users, and the rest we will keep as is for now. Now, very quickly, we might want an additional button over to the left. So with my ellipse tool one more time, whoops, that's not the ellipse tool. Here's the ellipse tool, drag one out. And this one is not the primary call to action. So we might want to go for more of a grayish color, something around there. And in the center of this, we may want a very simple icon to message. Now for this, we're going to talk more about plugins at some point in a future challenge, but I'm going to hop into the plugins panel down below, and I'm going to go, I have my Icons for Design plugin installed. You can do that by pressing the plus button at the top and Icons for Design, and let's try envelope. If I can spell correctly. There we go. I'm going to load this one in, make this a little bit smaller, and change the color to white. There we go. And I'm going to make sure to group these two elements and call this message. Perfect. So the top of our profile is looking pretty good. Now there may be a few additional elements at the top you may want to add. For example, we can hop in here, maybe type out chat. Let's see what looks good. This one looks pretty interesting. Whoa, where did you go? This is the one thing I don't like about the plugin is sometimes it throws icons wherever it feels like. Paste that into place. We can pop that up here. Maybe this is to access your messages, right? And you're probably noticing it's a little bit difficult to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to create one rectangle right about here. And I'm going to, instead of a solid color, I'm going to set this to a linear gradient. And both colors at the top and the bottom, I'm going to set to black. But the one at the bottom, I'm actually going to decrease the opacity all the way to 0. And this will allow me to then move this down below this layer so that it's now a little bit more visible. And of course, you can adjust the opacity if you want to, just like that. Now, the very last thing I'm going to show you before we wrap things up, it's more of a hint at what we're going to be getting at in future challenges this week and next week, is stacking. So all of these elements here, I might want to rearrange some of them, maybe move this button up here. By default, it's not very easy, right? Watch what happens if I go ahead and select all these elements. I'm going to do that directly in my layers panel. Select all these elements right here, pop them into a larger group, and I'll just call this user info. And then with that group created, I'm gonna go ahead in the Properties Inspector and turn on a stack. It's gonna automatically define this as a vertical stack going up and down. And what this will allow me to do is I can dive in here and just move things around if I need to. I can also select this group, which by the way, XD created for me, turn another stack on and move things around, right? So you have stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. And what's really nice is if I did decide to add an additional line to this user's bio, it automatically rearranges and shifts things around down below, which is wonderful. And we're gonna learn a lot more about stacks, I believe next week on day number 7, possibly, maybe day number 6. But that's going to do it for today's profile. I am going to be back tomorrow with day number 2 of the XD Daily Creative Challenge, where we are going to be tackling, what are we going to be tackling tomorrow? Let me just give you a quick peek. We've got Scott and Reverb, Mike, and we've got Brett and Dorina, Seth, Sam, Scott, again, Bernadette for day number 2. I'll see y'all later.